Hi friends, this is Caly. Welcome to an exclusive video series for Simon Says Stamp called 5 Ways in 5 Days. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this, and today we're going to be working with the Simon Says Stamp strip dies. Now there are two sets here on my Stamp and Storage magnet cards. My magnet card is a 6x7 magnet card and is also sold at Simon Says Stamp. I just like to use these magnet cards to store dies like this to keep them all in the same place and easy to grab because I love using these dies. As I mentioned, there are two sets of dies. The first set is on the left and the second set is on the right. I just put them in order by size and store them on my magnet card so that it's all in the same place and I can easily grab what I want to use. I also want to mention that Stamp and Storage makes these magnet cards in several different sizes, even bigger than the ones I have right now. So be sure to check that out. They're all sold at Simon Says Stamp, and you can find a great new way to store some of your most used dies. All right, now that we've talked about how to store those dies, let's talk about how to store those strips. I have pre-cut a bunch of strips in all of the Simon Says Stamp colors of the rainbow, and I store them in these labeled storage pockets. These are the same storage pockets that I put my stamps and dies in, so I just labeled them with all of the colored cardstock names, and once I put that top flap into the storage pocket, all of the strips are secured in place and nothing will fall out because of the height of these strips. And the perfect solution for storing all of these is not in a bin, but in these mesh bags. They are of high quality, they are super sturdy, and I'm sure you can use them all over the house, not just in your craft room. I absolutely love that I can store all of this in one place and grab and go if I need to. I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit limited with taking coloring mediums with me in a car ride or waiting for my son to finish practice. I feel like if I just added a few white panels and some dot runner to my mesh bag, I can take this with me and just strip it up in the car. That sounds really terrible, but you know what I mean. It is a big effort to die cut all of these cardstock and to store and organize them, but it is well worth the effort when it's all ready to go for your next stripping session. Sorry, I had to. Okay, so let's dive right into our first card. My first card is going to be a diagonal stripped card, and it's going to showcase these strips as a background. Before we get started, let's talk about adhesive options. I have the Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue here. It's their liquid adhesive. I have two bottles here simply to show you how it comes and how I've modified it using a fine tip applicator at the top to prevent clogging and for ease of use. There are a few different fine tip applicators that you can add to your bottles, and you can find all of those at Simon Says Stamp. All right, so our next option here is a dry adhesive, and Simon Says Stamp has a dot runner with refills. I've just gone ahead and cut off the top there so that I can keep storing my refills in their packaging. I'm going to use the dot runner today for my paper strips, and I'll go ahead and cover this entire panel with it. And I say cover the entire panel because we want to make sure all of these thin strips are adhered down well. So be sure to make sure that there is full coverage, and that way if you have to do any trimming, you won't lose any pieces of your strips. I'm just laying down my first strip at random here at a diagonal, and I'm starting away from the top because I really want an organic flow of colors. So I want it to blend into the red and not starting with the red, if that makes sense. I'm going to speed that up. I'm just going to lay down the strips in order of the colors of the rainbow that I've gone ahead and laid out. And once I reach the bottom of this corner here, I am using less and less of the strips, so there's more of an overhang, and I want to be able to repurpose those. So I'm going to stop and trim those off so that I can reuse the strips that I'm cutting off to fill up the rest of my corner on the top right part of the panel. Once I chop all those pieces off, we can continue filling in the top left corner there, and I'm just going to repurpose all of those strips that I cut off, and then any small pieces that I feel like I can't repurpose, I can just toss and then save the longer pieces. So we have our entire white panel covered here. I'm just going to trim off all of these pieces, keeping it an A2 size, because again, we want to make this a full background. It's a very busy and colorful background, so what we want to do to make a card out of this is to keep it simple with the next few elements. For this frame, I'm using the outline floral frame. I'm just going to die cut it 3 times because I want to stack them for additional support and dimension. So I'll go ahead and flip one over at a time and add adhesive to them and adhere them together to create a sturdy frame for our rainbow stripped background. I'm going to be using the Craft Tacky glue for this because it's a nice and thick liquid adhesive that can help me get little fine dots all over this intricate die and be able to stack it all together without a lot of liquid adhesive oozing out all over the place. That's not what we want, right? Okay, so I have everything adhered together here and stacked. We can go ahead and adhere that to our rainbow striped background. Again, I'm just adding little dots of adhesive all over the intricate areas of those flowers on this frame and just adding a fine line of adhesive all around the rectangle border. And we'll go ahead and adhere that down and then work on our sentiment. I've got the CZ Thanks die here. I've die cut the background in black cardstock, and you guessed it, I die cut 3 words. And we're going to go ahead and stack those together and adhere that over that black background to frame in our thanks sentiment. When I was planning this card in my head, I planned for it to be a portrait top folding note card, but after die cutting this sentiment and playing with its layout, I realized that it should be more suited as a landscape style card. So I'm going to flip this panel 90 degrees, playing around with it, deciding on my layout. And once I decided where to put my sentiment, I'll go ahead and add adhesive to that and adhere it over my rainbow striped background. I'm going to use a T ruler, make sure everything is straight. And then we are going to adhere this to a card base that I've prepared. So I'll go ahead and add adhesive to that and add my card to it. And then we are done with card number 1. This is such a fun and easy card to make as long as you have all of your die cut strips ready to go, and you can change up the color palette and make it however you like, and it can even be a masculine card depending on the colors you choose and the frames that you choose. Okay, so now let's start on card number 2, which is more simple in my opinion. I am using the second size up in those strip dies. Because these strips are wider, we're not going to be able to fit as many colors on the panel, but I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing by first adding some adhesive dot runner to the entire panel, and then I'll lay down the strips in rainbow order, this time going horizontally. Again, I'm choosing red first to start, and I'm choosing a random place to start. You can start anywhere, and that is totally completely up to you. So I worked my way down and finished at the bottom and then filled in at the top. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and cut off the excess here. And this time I have smaller strips that are wider that I can save for another project. Or you know what I should have done? Added another piece of white cardstock to the back of the overhang there and then have a thinner stripped panel that I can use for a second card. Anyhow, I'm trimming this panel now, and again, keeping it an A2 size card. The purpose of this card is to show ways that we can use a rainbow striped background or just a striped background as a border. So what I'm going to do is create a frame that isn't quite like the first card. It's more of a framed panel with windows, so that way you could see all the pops of colors through those heart windows. And this is the chunky hearts panel that I've die cut in white. I've also die cut it with the stitched rectangles to give it a nice stitched border. I'm going to add foam adhesive to the back of that and then adhere it to my card. You can take it up another notch if you want and turn this into a shaker window. I have done that before when I used this chunky hearts panel, but today I'm just going to keep it simple because it's all about those stripes. I'm using a simple small hello die here. I've die cut it twice, stacked them again for support, and adhere that just simply over the bottom 1/3 portion of my card. Once I place it in position, I'm just going to put a clear acrylic block over it to hold it in place while I prepare a top folding note card. As I was adding tape runner to my card base to adhere that card front, I ran out of adhesive. So this is the perfect time to show you how refilling works. So there's a button with a smiley face at the very top, and all you have to do is press on that. This was my first time refilling, and I don't want you to think that it ran out after 2 cards because it really didn't. I've had this tape runner for a while and have used it on several cards. Anyhow, you pop that cartridge apart and then you pull out the tape portion that ran out, and I'm just gonna cut apart this refill and just unpackage what I need. So I'm gonna take that out of the packaging, and what you're gonna do is just pop it right in place, line it up so that the dispensing side is in the opening, When that refill cartridge is in place, all we have to do is close the lid over that and snap it in place, and we're ready to go again. I'm just going to finish adding adhesive to my card base here, attach my card front, and what we have is a striped card with a hearts panel window that showcases the colorful striped background. All right, now on to card number 3. I saved the best for last because this one is a little bit more tricky. We're not straight up lining things up, we're actually weaving paper. So what I have here is a craft mat. This is the craft mat that's supposed to go on Tim Holtz's glass media mat. I just really love it because it's a good size and it's portable. You can also buy it separately, so we'll make sure to link it below for you if you're interested. All right, so on to the weaving. I am doing rainbow order again. So I started with red. I laid down the vertical one first and then laid down the horizontal. And as I'm adding each additional color, I am weaving into the previous colors that are already there. Once you have your first few down, it doesn't matter if you start with the horizontal band or the vertical band. You just got to make sure that it weaves and interlocks with each additional strip that you add. And there's really no rhyme or reason for why I choose a wider or a thinner strip. I just make sure that it's equal at the end. So there are 3 going vertically and 3 going horizontally. And I just make sure that it's a balanced square once I'm done weaving. I'm going to continue interlacing these paper strips by going under and over the bands opposite of what was there before. It's a little difficult to explain weaving, but as you can see, we're just going under and over the previous bands that are there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep weaving until I get through the rainbow. For my third card, I am making a slimline design, so I have a smaller footprint to work with because I don't plan on weaving an entire panel. I don't want my weaved pattern to be the background, I want it to be a focal point. If I were to fill it and wanted to make a larger weave, I would just add more colors, adjust the size of strips, and then also adjust the spacing to easily cover a full panel. You can also plan ahead by laying out your strips without weaving it first to make sure you have enough, or take away some strips and make adjustments if you have too many. I did feel that the bigger the weave got, the easier it was to add additional strips because there's such a strong foundation there that we're just adding and tucking in those pieces of cardstock. And then you can also adjust as you go, making sure that things don't go out of line and the spacing is correct. All right, we're nearing the end now. I am going to finish up with the purples and the pinks, and we should have a weave that's big enough to accent on a slimline design. This really excites me because I've always wanted to weave paper and I have just never made the time, and this just gives me a good excuse to play with all of these colorful strips. All right, so once we're done, we can just lift that right off of the craft mat. I'm going to flip it over and add tons of adhesive on the back side because again, we're going to be adhering this to our slimline panel. I want to make sure that everything sticks down and adheres well and doesn't shift out of place. I have my slimline panel now and I'm just positioning where I want this weaved pattern to be. And when I'm done, I'm just gonna press it into place and then I'm gonna pull a few of those strips to make sure that I get full coverage on my slimline panel. And this is quite easy to do because that dot adhesive isn't permanent until you press it into place. So I love that I can reposition easily and it will become more permanent once I am done with my card and it's able to have time to cure and dry on the cardstock. So right now I am trimming off the extra strands of overhang, and I'm going to use my liquid adhesive to adhere everything into place. I'm kind of just lifting the flaps and adding a row or a line of adhesive that's very thin so it doesn't ooze out. And then I'll use an acrylic block to hold it down while I adhere the remaining strips down. This will secure your weave in place and make sure that none of those flaps or ends come flying off of your panel. All right, so now we have lots of adhesive to kind of rub off. You can use your fingers, but I'm using this Thermoweb adhesive pickup square, and I'm just gonna rub that adhesive off, and then you have a clean weave on your card panel. Now I'm gonna do a final trim to cut off all the excess and make sure that everything is lined up, and then it also mats a card base when I'm done. I die cut 3 of these simple stems, and at first I was gonna stack them, but I decided once I threw them on this weave here that they looked better arranged more sporadically, so that's what I'm gonna do. I also went ahead and prepared my sentiment. It's die cut from the word beautiful with a vellum background. I did die cut the word beautiful 3 times and stacked the black cardstock, so we have some height and dimension on that. I went ahead and adhered down my simple stems. On that third one in the middle, I did trim a part of the stem so that I can adjust it for my card, and then I also adhered the sentiment down. Now I have my prepared card base here. That's a slimline 3.5 by 8.5 panel. And I'll go ahead and adhere this whole piece down using foam adhesive to give it more dimension. And that finishes my third card. So now I've shown you 3 ways to use strips and also how to store and what adhesives are best used for them, in my opinion. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed all the tips and tricks here today for making strips, storing them, and creating with them. I had so much fun creating these cards, and I hope you enjoyed the process. Thanks so much for joining me today, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.